So I put up the top 3 of these out on social media and not on YouTube, and I really wanted to dive into a little bit more in depth on each and every one of these, even the top 3, and then add a little more to it here on YouTube. So this is your first powerlifting meet expectations and things that you may need to know or want to know, especially if you aren't immersed in the powerlifting culture, whether it's a gym, you don't have a coach, you've done this a really short time, you just dove into it, whatever that would be. I want to help you along with your first meet. So the number one thing, the number one rule that I tell everyone is make sure you have fun, especially because you paid for this. Especially if it's your first meet, you're going to have probably shelled out a decent amount of money. You're going to have bought a singlet. You probably have bought some other gear, whether it's a belt, some shoes, whatever that would be, as well as you're going to pay for your meet federation. You're going to pay for your entry fee. You may have paid for coaching or programming, plus you're going to have travel typically sometimes. Hopefully not, hotel, meet day food. There's a lot that goes into this and a lot of money that can go into this. So make sure you're having fun. Now, also to kind of mention, I did mention this, maybe make your first meet closer to home so you don't have to worry about travel, maybe even sleep in your own bed the night before. That would be a huge recommendation. Number 2, knowing your rules. So this is where as a beginner lifter, you may want to have or hire a coach. And I say bring a coach in quotation marks because that could just be a friend or a training partner or somebody that's at least done one powerlifting meet that can help you along the way on meet day, kind of help you with the flow of the meet and understand kind of how things are supposed to work, what some of the nuances to some of the rules are specific maybe to your federation as well. And that way you're not getting red lights with simple mistakes like re-racking a squat too early or jumping a start command on bench press or putting your belt on the platform. There's some weird, nuanced, finicky rules that you kind of need to make sure you go over and follow. Having a coach with you makes that meet day, kind of calms the nerves and kind of leads into number 3 as well, and that is be conservative early and understanding the flow of how the meet day is going to be. So that's where a coach and somebody with experience can help you plan out your warm-up attempts. So you're probably going to have to be a little bit less attempts than you would in normal training in terms of working up the weight. You should hopefully be cutting that down to cut a little bit of volume out. But also when you go to meet day, it just depends on how fast the meet is flowing, how many people are in your flight and warming up all at the same time. So this can be a lot, especially at your first meet. So being conservative early can also help get a lift in the meet. So maybe take your squat opener and say, oh, I want to open it this weight. Well, why don't you bump it down 5 or 10 pounds from that to make sure that no matter what happens with weird judging, with whatever would happen, butterflies, you make sure it's something that you completely can get in the meet with and be conservative, maybe even on your first bench and first deadlifts as well, and then you can make bigger jumps to your second and third attempts to be a little bit more aggressive. But kind of tying back into the 2 of these is you have to also understand the flow of that meet, of planning out how long and much time do you want in between your warm-up attempts, and knowing how fast is the meet moving and when should I take my warm-ups. That's something a coach can help you with. And something that can run into problems with your conservativeness is that you want to make sure that if you get rushed up, that your first lift, you can make sure you get in no matter what, even if maybe your warm-ups were rushed. So let's talk about meet week. The big thing is it should be deloading. So now, and my views have changed over the years, and right now I've got 2 lifters getting ready for a meet that we're doing a little bit more than we used to during meet week. It's still not a lot. It's very, very, very low volume. We've cut out all accessory work. It's basically meet day, kind of how would you warm up on meet day, practice that, and hit a lift that's probably below your last warm-up in training this week, just to kind of feel it, because typically you're training week to week, you're training hard, hitting better and better, getting stronger and stronger. You're used to training. You don't want to have a whole week of doing nothing. You're going to be maybe feeling weird, not working out, not exercising, not moving. So make sure you don't do anything overly new or aggressive as well. Don't add in a new stretching routine this week. Don't change up a ton of food if you can help it. As well as first meet is hopefully you're not dealing with cutting weight. That leads into nutrition, but meet week, people like to cut weight, and I understand if you're maybe 1 or 2, but you're super, super close. But most people recommend your first meet, go in whatever body weight is, and just go in whatever you're at and just lift there. You may have to jump a big category, but just get your feet wet before you start worrying about body weight categories as much. With meet week as well, keep things normal. But the best thing you can maybe do is probably increase a little bit of sleep. I wouldn't try to overly change anything because your normal schedule is how you normally lift in the gym and how you perform well. So we want to have just a little bit more rest and recovery, but we don't want to change and do anything drastically new. In terms of meat day nutrition, kind of meat week nutrition, like I said, don't change anything drastic. Don't do anything brand new if you can help it. Meat day nutrition, kind of the same thing. Now we know what's gonna help you more is a little bit more carbohydrates, but you kind of still wanna feel well balanced. You don't want anything super heavy on your stomach, but kind of eat the normal foods that you would normally eat. Once again, don't change anything too drastic. If your normal given work day, you're gonna eat these type of foods, maybe have those same type of foods. Maybe change the quantity, maybe make a little bit shift to maybe a little bit more carbohydrates since it is meat day, and you're gonna have bouts of exercise, multiple bouts as in a squat, a bench, and a deadlift session. And one of the last things is judging will be judging. You cannot do anything to control that judging. How it's gonna be on that day is how it's gonna be on that day. The depth on squat is should be consistent. So you should be able to trust that those judges are gonna call the same way for every single person. And that's what it's gonna be that day. If it's a little deeper than you're used to, you may need to be a little conservative early. A coach can go out and watch the first couple squats and kind of get a gauge on how deep they're going. I always love coaching to the fact of leave no doubt. Don't be a type of squatter that cuts it high or tries to jump your press commands on bench. And make sure you are very strong in the parts that are judged the hardest. Squat depth, bench pause, butt stays down on bench, and lockout on your deadlift. Those are kind of the big things. And hopefully your judging should be consistent. If it's consistently terrible all day, just be ready for it to be consistently terrible. Don't let that affect you. Do your lifts to the best of your ability. And then if you have to, just call it a training PR if they give you white lights on depth. Red lights on your squat depth, and you don't get that squat in. Call it a training PR and move on. Don't let it affect you. Decide to retake it typically, and that's something that is kind of a coaching aspect is if you do miss a lift in your first meet, the best thing you could probably do is retake that same weight instead of jumping up. You wanna make sure you get in the meet and build your total. Powerlifting is about the total. It's not about just one lift. There's the one lift specialist, but most of all powerlifters just are concerned with the total, or should be concerned with the total. So if a bench pause is longer than your usual, be conservative early so that way you can manage that. And maybe you're not gonna bench as much as you did in training in a meet, but you have to do it under meet conditions. And that's what makes this sport difficult, is performing under conditions that day. And I love the head-to-head aspect of it. So if you guys have listened to this far and me talking about first powerlifting meet, I'd like to hear what things that, if you've done a meet before, what are some things that you would add to this list? Or if this is soon to be your first meet, this is the first time you're watching this video, let me know what hits home the most, maybe before and then also after you do your first meet. So trying to help out. We're gonna do a lot of whiteboard talks this week, so hoping you guys like this and take something away from it. So like I said, let us know in the comments what your thoughts and experiences are with this, and we'll be glad to maybe do a follow-up to this maybe in a few weeks after we get some more feedback on this.